The end is here. I can just see the edits of that music playing while Adesanya gets knocked out by Nassourdine Imavov. It's over. It's over. It's true. It's damn true. Adesanya loses to Nassourdine Imavov, and that is probably gonna call it a career. Probably not, just because MMA fighters like to stick around longer than they should, but I think that was the one, right? That's like the title fight losses, you know, it is what it is. You lose title fights. It's just, you're not the best in the world anymore. Whoop-de-doo. But once you start losing below that level below, it's like it happened to Anderson Silva. It's happened to every single middleweight champion once they've lost the belt. I guess Adesanya won the belt back, but other than that, it's just been a complete shit show for Adesanya as well. Think about it. Anderson Silva got completely ridiculed for the end of his career. Oh my god, he couldn't hang in today's MMA. Marvin Vettori would destroy him. Keep that same energy for Israel Adesanya. Please tell me how Hernandez and Brandon Allen would destroy Israel Adesanya and how he couldn't hang in today's MMA. Please tell me how Roman Dolidze, an old fossil himself, is somehow going to be able to beat Adesanya. Because when Michael Bisping beat Anderson, despite the fact that from the same era, everyone was like, oh well, more proof that the aging star is no longer got it or is like getting surpassed by these younger athletes. He just got older, man. Like, Adesanya is just 35 years old. Nassourdine Imavov is 28 years old. And Dana White said it in the press conference himself. He's like, well, young, hungry dude. Adesanya looked good, but, you know, he got caught. That instinct, that, you know, that little reaction time that you have to be extremely quick. Like, you look more stiff. Like, Adesanya looked quick in the first round, I get it. But those reaction times where you're going to be moving around, it's just not the same. Like, letting your leg get caught by Nassourdine Imavov only to pull away. And then eventually get caught. Like, you're just not imagining that. And one more thing. Adesanya tried to look like a badass, tried to look cool as hell, telling Herb Dean to back off, like Alex Pereira did, and then immediately got followed up by a KO himself. It's kind of funny how Alex Pereira, in basically every way possible, ever since their 2 fights together, has surpassed Adesanya. Not surpassed him, I don't think he's all-time greater than Adesanya. But he's just doing things differently to Adesanya. Adesanya is losing to these guys. Alex Pereira is being the best light heavyweights on the planet. It's tough. Like, are we really going to be waiting for Adesanya versus MVP next? I know they won't fight each other, but what's next for him? Roman Dolidze? Don't give him Chaparral. Please don't give him Chaparral. He would murk him. He would completely murk and destroy him. And it's sad. There was a point in my life where I was thinking to myself, in 2019, all my friends were chatting in the group chat, and I was like, Adesanya beats Robert Whittaker. You know why? Because I was an Adesanya fan. I was like, you know what? This guy's got underrated takedown defense. I think he's got the striking to beat Robert Whittaker. And God forbid, he did it. And I was a big fan of Adesanya. I wanted him to become the greatest middleweight of all time. I do think he fell short of that goal. But he's still the second greatest middleweight by far, quite easily. And he's arguably a top 10 fighter of all time. He's great, but it's over. And this one hurts. Like, for all the people that hate Israel Adesanya, I get it. The dog stuff is fucking weird. The fact that he was fiddling with a dog's penis, the fact that he was kissing his dog on the mouth. Actually, kissing a dog on the mouth isn't that bad, I don't think, in my opinion. I think if you just go home and you just really love your dog and you kiss it on the mouth, that's a normal human thing to do. I don't know, I'm not cool enough, I guess, to be in the ins and outs of what's considered, like, socially acceptable in today's world. But in my opinion, kissing a dog on the mouth, not the worst thing that could possibly happen. But overall, I will say Israel Adesanya, if you hate him, I can see the hate, but even the people that hate him, I was looking at the comment section of like the clips of Adesanya getting KO'd, and there was a lot of crying emojis like, oh my god, it's over, it's really over. Adesanya is finally dead. He's finally died. And he's just not one of those fighters in my opinion. I just don't see the satisfaction of seeing Adesanya lose. I was rooting for DDB to beat him. I was rooting for Strickland to beat him. But it's not just Imavov. I'd root for Adesanya against other fighters that aren't title fights. I just would. I like him. Because I remember there was a time where I was an MMA fan, but I wasn't watching week to week like the fight nights and all that stuff. And then after Adesanya, like, I wanted to watch his career progress, and I was like, oh my god, I wonder if there's more fighters like him on like cards I don't really watch. So I started watching week to week MMA from 2019 to now. And before that, I was still watching MMA, like the pay-per-views and everything, but my fandom went to a different level because of Israel Adesanya. Like, my original favorite fighter was Israel Adesanya. I like, obviously, fighters before him as well. But the first fighter that I was like really invested in watching him grow and become the GOAT of a division or the GOAT of the sport was Israel Adesanya. He didn't quite reach that level in my opinion. He was just a level below the GOAT, the gods of MMA, mixed martial arts. You know who they are, the six. Don't let Lucas Tracy fool you and tell you Merab is one of the greatest fighters of all time. He isn't, even though he's great. But yeah, that's the end of Adesanya. And Imavov, he deserves a title shot at least, right? Like, I think if Imavov doesn't get a title shot, it's all rigged. Because he's done more than Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev beat Usman, a welterweight, an aging welterweight, fighting at middleweight. Whoop-de-doo. Arguably a draw. Arguably lost. I don't know. You decide. And then he beat Rob Whittaker in dominant fashion. Imavov has just knocked out Adesanya in the second round, early into the fight. He's also beaten and KO'd Jared Cannonier. Beat Brendan Allen, a top 10 level middleweight fighter. Roman Dolidze, garbage, but still he beat him. He's beaten some good dude. He beat Joaquin Buckley back in the day. And his one loss to Sean Strickland, it's Sean Strickland in hindsight. Sean Strickland was a beast. He beat Adesanya as well. So at this point, it's like, well, are we really just going to give Khamzat the title shot just because his name's Khamzat Chimaev? Like, what happened to the sport being a sport? But anyway, I imagine Nassourdine Imavov moves up to number 2 in the rankings. Adesanya falls to number 4. Khamzat Chimaev stays at number 3. But yeah, a shocking turn of events to say the least. The end of the last style bender, the end of Israel Adesanya. And the next career move might be to go to light heavyweight. That might be it. But again, who is he going to fight? Yuri Prohaska? Because he's going to be given someone in the top 5. Jamal Hill? He could beat Jamal Hill. But Yuri Prohaska is a tough fight, man. You think Nassourdine Imavov's fast for his size? You think Nassourdine Imavov hits hard for his size? Wait till you get to Yuri Prohaska. The guy's at 205. He fights at basically 210 on fight day for some weird reason. Like he did in his last fight. And he's fast, he's quick, and he is skillful. I'm sorry, I just don't want to hear people say, oh, Yuri Prohaska just pops his head into the shots. No, he does have head movement, he does have skill. And he's a wild fighter, and maybe that's what Adesanya needs, a wild fighter that he can potentially catch like he used to in the olden days when before everyone realized how good he was, people used to be like, oh my god, it's Adesanya. Let's run at him. Like fucking Gaslam with his iron chin, Brunson with his weak fucking fetal chin, Whittaker, you know, Roel Romero was like, no, I'm not going to do that, but then even he just threw the fight by not doing anything. You know what I mean? Paulo Costa eventually got pieced up from a distance when he was too hesitant. Little by little, fight by fight, Adesanya's game plan is kind of getting out there. Now it's just like, the aging is there. Like, when he was technical enough and like fast twitched and everything, that didn't really matter too much because even though they knew what Adesanya was going to do, like fights like Cannonier and Vettori, they were boring fights. The second Whittaker fight wasn't actually boring. That was a good fight, but they knew what Adesanya was trying to do, but he was just so quick and so good at what he did that he could just get away with it. It didn't matter they knew what he was going to do. He was just a step above. He could just like impose his will onto his opponents. But now it's like, Imavov is rocking Adesanya in the first round, kind of. Pushing him against the fence, Adesanya's throwing counters, but it's not the same anymore. They're not landing, and the precision, the timing, it's not the same. And I'm going to end this video on one thing. Even though I like Adesanya, I'm a fan of Adesanya, or I was, or, you know, I'm a tweener. I float in and out. I was a fan from in this fight for the last 2 fights. I was rooting for the other guy to win. But for everyone saying that Anderson Silva couldn't hang in today's division, right? Because of the way that his career ended. Do you really think if Adesanya fought 10 more fights, he would have a positive record? You don't think he would lose more than he'd win? Especially if he's only fighting top 10 level guys? Because it's not like Anderson Silva started fighting unranked dudes. Oh my god, here comes another scrub for Anderson Silva to feed on. He fought Jared Cannonier. He fought Derek Brunson, who was a top 10 guy at the time. He fought Michael Bisping, another top 5, top 10 guy at the time. Top 10 at least. He was fighting the top of the division. And when he fought Nick Diaz, he beat him. If it is Adesanya fights him welterweight, Michael Venom Page, he'll beat him. Well, what's all this fucking double standards for everyone? If Adesanya continues on his fight, and let's say he fights Chao Barao next, like the progression of, oh, we'll fight someone outside the top 5 now. Oh, Chao Barao's number 6, he'll lose. Unless he fights Roman Dolidze, an old fuck, untalented, skillful fucking fighter. He'll probably lose to most of these guys nowadays, I feel like. I'm not so sure he beats fucking Anthony Hernandez. I'm not so sure he beats Brendan Allen. To be honest with you, even his grappling takedown defense is amazing, and Brendan Allen on the feet is completely nothing, really. Chris Curtis was going to beat him. Actually, he would probably beat Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen is garbage. Like, he is not... And once the next surge of guys come in... Because keep in mind, the guys that Anderson Silva was losing to, there were guys that would go on to become top 5. There were guys that would become champion. There were guys that would become the next contender to fight for the title. Anderson Silva lost to a young Israel Adesanya 29-28, a close fight. I know you might be thinking, oh, Adesanya wasn't really trying to harm his hero. Adesanya's gone out there and said himself he was trying to KO the guy. Anderson Silva was losing to Daniel Cormier, the light heavyweight champion at the time, on short notice, whom he hurt in the 3rd round. But Anderson Silva gets no legacy. Oh my god, a loser, lost to everybody. But Israel Adesanya, on the other hand, it's like, oh, well, you know, he's only losing to the best guys. He's older now. Like, no. Anderson Silva, when he lost the belt, I think he was above 35 himself. He was an older man. He actually sustained excellence for longer than Adesanya did. How about that? You know what I mean? It's not the same thing. And the only times Anderson was really losing, I mean, his last loss was Uriah Hall. You're telling me if Adesanya fights like 6, 7 guys back to back to back, like champions, former champions, future champions, guys that will be top 5, challenging for the title, and that's the only opponents he gets, he won't lose. And by the time he's up to his last fight against Uriah Hall, let's say he fights a Uriah Hall level competition, by the time he's 38 and has suffered all those losses and been in all those fights and all those training camps, he wouldn't lose to a lesser opponent like that? Shut up. Anderson Silva is still the greatest middleweight of all time. Bar none, there's no conversation. Anything you make up is completely based on stuff that you've made up the criteria. You're not looking at the stuff they actually accomplished and did in their career. You're just looking at points in their career where they weren't the greatest. No one thinks that version of Anderson Silva is the greatest fighter ever. The version that dominated the middleweight division is. The version that Adesanya is losing right now is not the greatest or the second greatest middleweight of all time. The version that was dominating the division was. Just keep that in mind, right? Next time you fucking talk shit about the great Anderson Silva. Just keep that same energy for Israel Adesanya. Please tell me how he couldn't survive in fucking, you know, how he couldn't survive in the future era of Roman Dolidze and how tough that is. If Anderson Silva in his prime fought Nassourdine Imavov, he probably beats him. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think Anderson Silva was the better MMA striker than Israel Adesanya. I thought he was more fluid with his motions. I thought he was more precise. I know Adesanya is very precise, but I feel like Anderson Silva, he was a counter striker as well, but I feel like he could impose his will far more than Adesanya did in his prime. I also liked his, and I know Adesanya probably has the better leg kicks, but I liked Anderson's kicks more. I'm sorry, I just did. I think the way the unpredictability of his kicks, they were just better than Adesanya's. The way he could just get his foot underneath people's chin, the way he was moving. I'm sorry, but whatever. Just because they fought 5 years apart means there's a whole generational gap. And that means the sport evolved so much. Don't get me wrong, the sport and its techniques can evolve, but the actual athlete and the ability of a fighter, it stays the same. They just go into a different regime and resume and all that stuff. But for relative to their era, Anderson was the better fighter, and I still think he was the better striker. And the two of them actually fought each other. And Anderson didn't look too bad at his old age where he was slow. And we're seeing what Adesanya looks like now. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, like the video, subscribe. Kind of became a Adesanya hate fest towards the end, but I was just like, the double standard just confuses me. 221 subscribers. Let's get me to 250. 250 is the goal. Like the video, subscribe, share, comment, whatever. Hit the notification bell for more videos like this one. I'll see you next time. Bye.